Do you ever feel like you're juggling a million versions of yourself and still dropping the ball? Like you're switching hats all day, professional, partner, parent, friend, and no one really sees what it takes to just be you? Yeah, me too. Welcome to Hat Rack with Hannah. I'm Hannah, therapist, entrepreneur, author, podcast host, and also a mom, partner, daughter, friend, basically a professional hat wearer. I created this space where you don't have to minimize what you're carrying or rush past it. Because the truth is, you can have big dreams and feel overwhelmed by the roles it takes to hold them. Both get to exist. Here we slow it down, call it what it is, take some hats off, and figure out what actually belongs in your rack. So take a deep breath. You can set something down here, and let's get into it. Welcome back to Hat Rack with Hannah. I'm Hannah, and I'm so glad you're here. Happy August. Whether you're listening on your commute, between clients, while folding laundry, or stealing a few quiet minutes to yourself, thank you for making the space for this conversation today. This month, we're diving into a topic that's been sitting really heavy on my heart and is something I just recently really immersed myself in on a retreat, and it's called aligned entrepreneurship. So as we just came off our alignment month, and aligned entrepreneurship is how I operate within my business. And I feel is the difference between feeling fulfilled in your work and getting burnt out. And so I'm really excited to dive into this concept because as entrepreneurs, we hear countless messages around working harder, scaling faster, diversifying your income streams, saying yes to every single opportunity, being visible everywhere, and never stopping growing. But somewhere along the way, many of us stopped asking the much more important question of, does this business actually feel like mine anymore? Or does what I do actually feel good to me? Because building a successful business and career and building an aligned business and career are not always the same thing. I've worked with many entrepreneurs in my therapy practice, coached business owners, built businesses myself, obviously, and interviewed incredible founders on this podcast. And one thing I've noticed is that burnout doesn't usually happen because we're incapable. It happens because somewhere along the way we drift away from ourselves. And today's episode is about recognizing that drift before it becomes disconnection and how we can be aligned in our entrepreneurship and our career paths in ways that feel good to us. Because your career or being an entrepreneur does not need to just be about the financial piece. We also have to do this every day because we live in a capitalistic society, right? And a part of that is actually enjoying what you're doing on a day-to-day. So first, I want to get clear on the difference between entrepreneurship and aligned entrepreneurship, because it isn't simply what you build, it's how and why you build it. So for example, entrepreneurship, like a focal point, can be focused on creating and growing a business. But aligned entrepreneurship can mean focuses on creating a business that reflects your values, purpose, and well-being. Entrepreneurship can be success is often measured by revenue, growth, visibility, or market share, but aligned is success that includes fulfillment, sustainability, impact, and personal health alongside financial goals. Another example is entrepreneurship can often reward hustle, speed, and constant optimization, when aligned entrepreneurship prioritizes intentional action, rest, and long-term sustainability. Entrepreneurship can encourage comparison and following industry trends versus aligned encourages building based on your unique strengths, visions, and values. Aligned entrepreneurship separates your worth from your business and your outcomes, and normal entrepreneurship can be identity becomes tied to your business performance. Normal entrepreneurship decisions are often driven by what will make the most money, and aligned as decisions ask, does this support the life I'm trying to create? Normal is growth may come at the expense of relationships or health, and aligned is growth is designed to coexist with relationships, health, and personal values. So entrepreneurship asks, what am I problem solving? How do I grow? How do I increase revenue? How do I scale? But aligned entrepreneurship asks, what kind of life do I want this business to support? Am I building from purpose or fear? Does this opportunity fit in my values? Is my nervous system paying the price for my success? And who am I becoming while building this business? The biggest differentiator is that traditional entrepreneurship often assumes that if the business succeeds, your life will eventually fall into place. But aligned entrepreneurship starts from the opposite belief. You build a life first, then build a business that supports it. Rather than sacrificing your well being now for a future version of success, aligned entrepreneurship asks whether your current way of working already reflects the life you're hoping to create. Another way to summarize this is entrepreneurship teaches you how to build a successful business, but aligned entrepreneurship teaches you how to build a successful life and then create a business that supports it. Aligned asks whether your success is costing you the very life you were trying to create in the first place. And this distinction resonates especially with healers, therapists, parents, and purpose-driven entrepreneurs who want businesses that are not only financially sustainable, but also emotionally and personally sustainable. With these differences, we often find places where entrepreneurship can call us away from ourselves and we can find the misalignments there. One of the biggest misconceptions about entrepreneurship is that once you become your own boss, you finally have freedom. I love and I remember thinking this too. And in many ways, you do, and you should. But you get to create your own schedule, you get to choose your own clients, you get to build something meaningful. But entrepreneurship also introduces something most people don't expect, which is unlimited opportunity. There's no boss telling you when to stop working. Work never truly ends. There's always another email, launch, social media trend, certification, networking event, client inquiry, or another idea. So the finish line just keeps moving away from us, right? I think too, specifically niched into the space of being a woman or a female entrepreneur, we also have this internal push and pressure that is way more than anyone will ever put on us. But there's this pressure to succeed in a way that is defined by others instead of ourselves. And so it's just that internalized pressure that we have to be like leaning into urgency culture and responding all the time, being there for everyone, right? Very similar to our other roles that we hold and hats that we wear in our normal life, but it doesn't mean it serves us. And then we tap into the emotional side of owning a business and we realize that it's not just logistical, that it is actually deeply emotional, that every offer can feel personal and every no can feel like rejection. Every slow month can trigger fear and scarcity mindset. Every comparison can make you question your worth. Because unlike many careers, your business often feels intertwined with your identity. And you don't just own the business, you are the business, which means when the business feels uncertain, you often feel uncertain. I just facilitated at a retreat in Keystone, Colorado. Phenomenal with the amazing Abby. I will attach her info here for credit for this conversation. What I did at this retreat to facilitate was I helped participants work on their shadow work and their work that they need to do in order to clear blockages to be the most successful business owner that they define that to be in their journeys of entrepreneurship. So a big space that I work on a daily basis that I am stepping way more into because it just fills my soul is helping entrepreneurs detangle why I have financially, like, why do I have financial scarcity mindset? Why, when someone rejects that offer, am I totally triggered? Because we don't think about how emotionally attached we actually are. And all of our life, we've been taught that your career defines who you are. So when you are wearing a different hat, or you're being a stay-at-home mom, for example, or wearing another hat in your career, and you are taught that like how successful you are in your career or how successful you are in your role defines who you are, then we're going to take everything personally. And when we do that, we often react in ways and from spaces that aren't the customers to hold. A great example of mine when I was first starting my career as a therapist was I wanted to take on every client I could for financial purposes. But what I really learned is every client is not a fit for me, and I am not a fit for every client. And so I was trying to make things work that were not within my scope or didn't feel aligned with me. I remember taking a very challenging client and we just kept hitting heads. And I was like, why am I doing this? It's my business and I get to choose who I work with. And this client doesn't serve me. And if they're not serving me, then I'm not serving them to the best of my capabilities. And what I came to the conclusion of was this was much deeper work of where in my life I had also felt rejected and the people pleasing qualities that I had learned as a woman and as just through my familial dynamics of I have to please everyone. I have to be everyone's everything. You can't just reject a client. When in reality, for me, that is how I niched down and how I work with clients that serve and fuel me, right? And so I help business owners detach these things to clear blockages in order to be their most successful selves. And on this retreat, I got to facilitate that work and it just fueled my entire soul. And I'm going to be launching some new masterminds around it and offerings around it. So if this feels like you, DM me. But the emotional side of our business really can trigger us making decisions towards our customers that aren't for them to hold. But if you don't do that work, you're not going to realize that the emotional side is actually running our business in a way that doesn't serve you. And we have to detangle these things. So one of the questions that I want listeners to consider, have I been growing my role, my business, my career, or has my business role career been quietly consuming me? So deepening and the points of, is this fueling me or is this depleting me? And I really want to invite listeners to sit with this and really think through what ways we can figure out how to lean into the fuel and away from what doesn't serve you. I also really want to name this is a very important part of this conversation. Not every career is going to fuel you. Sometimes we honestly just have careers to pay the bills, and that's okay. And if that's where you're at in your life, okay, great. But then what are you doing outside your career or business ownership to fuel you? If we know it's a means to an ends, right? I want you to step away from it. I want you to do your tasks in a day and know that it's not going to fuel you, and then find the things that do fuel you and do them more often outside of work. So I just want to name that it doesn't mean I'm not telling you to go quit your jobs or quit your roles. We can just do it more aligned or make the decision that this isn't going to work for me, but I'm going to continue to do it for financially or whatever the reason is. And then I'm going to fuel myself over here in this way. So just want to name that because it's an important part of the conversation that often gets bypassed, and I don't want to do that. So tapping into also the difference between success and alignment. This is where I think our culture has confused achievement and fulfillment, right? Success is often external, the revenue, the followers, speaking invitations, recognition, awards, growth. But none of these things are inherently bad. In fact, many of us have worked incredibly hard for them. I know for myself, we have a lot of awards for my therapy business, and it feels really good to gain them. But alignment asks a completely different question. It's not what am I achieving and how does it look to others? Instead, it's how do I feel with what I'm achieving and how does it feel to me? Alignment, like what we've been discussing, is really when your calendar reflects your priorities and when your work reflects your values, your boundaries protect your energy, your nervous system isn't constantly surviving your own success. Because here's something that I've learned. You can build a beautiful business while also quietly abandoning yourselves. So some examples that I have, even just for myself, are turning down clients who aren't the right fit, just like the example I used earlier. And that is a form of alignment. Another example of what alignment could look like is raising your prices because sustainability matters. And for example, in Denver, Denver is getting more expensive. I have to prioritize feeding my mouths and my family's mouths first, right? Taking Fridays off. And by that, I actually mean off, something I've been working on. Yes, technically I have Fridays off, but let me tell you how many Fridays I work. It's a work in progress. Closing your laptop at 5 o'clock. Okay, 5 o'clock, I'm done. I'm going to go be with my humans or serve yourself if that's the time you do your self-care routine. Choosing slower growth over constant expansion. That's always a really hard decision to make, but can be very aligned with how you feel and also who you're calling in to serve the roles that you need them to serve. Hiring help before you're desperate. So when you're starting to feel like some of the parts and pieces of your business or your role aren't sustainable, advocating for those supports and getting what you need. What I've really tapped into is as a business owner and as I've grown is I am not the expert in a lot of things. So why am I going to sit here and try to be when I know that there are people who do that? For example, I have an incredible marketing team. That's their zone of genius, not mine. I'm never going to be an attorney, right? Of course, I tapped into that space, if you know my story, but I'm not going to review lease negotiations. That's an attorney's job. So I have an attorney for that, right? Building the team around you with their zones of genius to also support how you operate best. Creating one meaningful offering instead of five exhausting ones. I've been in so many positions where I need to realign what I'm offering because it serves and fuels me versus depletes me. I remember I did a play therapy animal assisted group for middle schoolers. And before I ran this group, I was the director of an affective needs center at a middle school. So I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. Lola gets to be in it. It just wasn't my favorite group to run. It didn't fuel me. After I did it, I was exhausted. I dreaded the days I was doing it. And so I stopped offering it, even though it filled every single time I offered it. But it didn't feel good to me. It also didn't feel good to Lola. She got to the point where she was hiding under the table. She hated it. So not a group to do that with. But I run a suicide grief group a few times a year. And Lola and I love it. And we leave it feeling fueled. And she interacts the entire time. And that's the difference in seeing alignment for her too and myself. And these aren't business strategies, right? They're nervous system strategies. And we have to have business strategies and nervous system strategies to have a successful business or be successful in your role or your career. How do we weave in both in order to have success with your nervous system and success that you define in your business strategy? When you're feeling a sticky spot for your nervous system in your business or in your role or your career, I want you to ask yourself, is this mine to work through or is this someone else's? Because we often project what's ours onto an issue or situation that arises, and our nervous system often responds before our brain does. For example, let's say you missed an email and it was a really important email, and then all of a sudden people are pressuring you, or can't believe you missed that email and you have a client issue now. Our body is going to respond to that because urgency culture tells us we have to. But what if we took a step back and realized, okay, from a space of an aligned nervous system and a regulated nervous system, how do I need to change my reaction? Is my reaction warranted? Is my reaction based in trauma, fear, scarcity mindset, people pleasing mindset? And really evaluate where your reaction is coming from and if it serves you or not. Most of the time, if we're reacting to that email that I just referred to, right? And we're like, oh my gosh, I missed it. And so that's a problem. We're reacting in a way that's not aligned with who we are. We're just reacting instead of thinking and then reacting. So also 9 times out of 10, you're not giving the response that's even helpful or warranted. You're just reacting. So make sure that you're stopping just quick reactions and instead thinking before you respond or evaluating, okay, is this even a crisis? Most of the time it's not. So you can take a minute to reflect and think on it. There are many hidden ways that entrepreneurs abandon themselves within building a business. I don't think self-abandonment usually happens dramatically, but it happens with one tiny decision at a time. You're answering an email during dinner. You're working on the weekends or saying, I'm just going to check this real quick, and then you're missing something somewhere else. You're saying yes because you're afraid they'll never ask again. You keep lowering your prices, and then it's to your detriment because then you're having trouble paying bills. You over deliver. I have clients all the time who don't respect a time boundary, right? And then I'm stuck being late for my next client. And I try very hard to be on time, but it's very difficult with some clients. For example, you apologize for your boundaries. You stay available because being needed feels safer than disappointing someone. And eventually you wake up wondering why your dream business feels so heavy. And it's because we're abandoning ourselves in very small ways, but over time it means big differences. This often happens when we're people pleasing, when we're having perfectionism, when we're comparing ourselves to one another, when we're having scarcity mindset, specifically financially, but also in other ways. The fear of being forgotten or not known enough, the fear of being judged, fear of slowing down means falling behind. That one's a difficult one. These aren't business problems, they're human experiences, and entrepreneurship simply amplifies them. So we need to name that and work through the amplified pieces in order to better align our nervous system with the strategies that we are bringing into our business. So, some personal reflection questions that we can ask ourselves to see where we're abandoning ourselves in our business can be: where have I confused accessibility with value? Where have I mistaken exhaustion for commitment? Who taught me that being constantly available made me successful? That question brings a lot of work behind it, personal work, and it can really help you understand where you're projecting what is not others onto them. That is actually your work to do. So I would love for y'all to really reflect in those. I want to name in these common patterns of self-abandonment. When you start to find them, like a really good example that I have is I just changed my therapy client schedule. I wanted to be home early so I could do bedtime with my girl. And I took my 5 to 6 slot on Mondays and my 6 to 7 slot on Thursdays, and I closed them so I could be home with my baby girl. And that is what I needed to do for me. Has it caused me stress and anxiety, like moving people around? Yeah, but I know I needed to do it for me. And at the end of the day, it honestly causes me less stress being home with her. And so it's also evaluating your needs based on your offerings and allowing people to be disappointed. People's disappointment isn't for you to hold. That's theirs, and you still need to set the boundary. But it's just those small things. And sometimes when I have to fill people in, I'll be like, oh, I have this spot. And I have to remind myself, no, you don't. You actually don't have that spot. You're going home. So much so to where I was struggling with it so bad, I started booking an appointment for myself at 5:30 on Mondays that I have to leave at 5 o'clock for. So I can't do that. Thursday's a little different. It's the last day of the week for me, so I'm easier to get out of the office, right? But just finding those areas where you're abandoning yourself and reclaiming them. Like I named before, your nervous system is part of your business strategy. We spend so much time talking about marketing strategies, sale funnels, branding, SEO, content calendars, but very little time talking about your nervous system that's trying to hold all of it. Your nervous system determines how you make decisions, how you respond to conflict, whether you freeze before launching, whether you undercharge clients, whether you avoid visibility, whether you overwork, whether you rest. All of these things are so important. For example, we have the same nervous responses in entrepreneurship that we do with trauma: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? And when entrepreneurs are in survival mode, they might, in fight phase, like overwork, control every detail, micromanage. When we're in flight phase, we might always chase the next opportunity, never feeling satisfied, constantly pivoting before something's fully fleshed out. We might also freeze, like procrastinate, avoid marketing, or delay launches, or feeling stuck despite having ideas. Or we might even fawn, discounting prices, overcommitment, over-explaining, saying yes to everybody. This isn't laziness, it's protection. And we need to name that this protection is something that we can work through in our shadow work in the therapeutic journey of entrepreneurship. But if we don't know that it's there, oftentimes we're projecting it onto our clients, and that doesn't serve you ever. The nervous system has such a substantial role in your business strategy and in your role management across every plane of your life. You don't have to have trauma to be in the survival stages. And oftentimes, entrepreneurship puts us in those survival stages because our business and our feelings are so deeply tied and wound together. So, how do we return to alignment once we've named places that we've misaligned, and realize that our business might not be serving us. Alignment isn't something you discover once, like we've talked about, right? It's something you practice daily through tiny little decisions. So I want listeners to answer these questions, and then we're going to do a little exercise. So the questions are, what feels heavy because it's no longer mine to carry? What have I outgrown? And what expectations am I still trying to meet? And I want you to apply that to the role you're in, the career you have, or the business that you operate, and see what comes to the surface for you. I then want you to do a values exercise. So I want to invite listeners to write down 5 business values, because oftentimes we drift from a business plan, if you even made one, right? Or why the hell we even started a business, or we're in our career, or we manage the role to begin with. So I want you to have 5 values and narrow them down. So an example of values can be like freedom, creativity, integrity, community, presence, service, learning, joy, curiosity, connection. And now I want you to look at your calendar after you have your 5 things and ask, does your week actually reflect those values? Because your calendar is often more honest than your intentions. Like I was saying earlier, right? I'd say my 5 o'clock on Mondays is taken, and I'd fill it every time. So I made the shift to have an appointment at 5:30 to where my ass has to be out of the office, honestly, by 4:55 to make that 5:30 appointment. And that reflects me getting home earlier. And it reflects me getting an appointment off my day on Fridays when Fridays are supposed to be my day off, right? That is a direct reflection of valuing me and time with my family that I put in my calendar. So we're assigning a logistical thing to something that we need for ourselves. Something I also want us to reflect in this week, when you look at your business or your career or the role that you hold, what is your definition of success? Because oftentimes we land on what the definition is, like making more revenue or gaining new clients, right? But we don't ever ask ourselves, what's our definition? Not the one in the review at the end of the year or the one that your partner gives when something goes awry, but what would you define you being successful with? So a question I want listeners to answer if they're feeling in this space is, what do I define as success in my role? And when you start to look through your calendar and have your calendar reflect what is actually aligning with you, go back to that definition, go back to those 5 values, and then realign your calendar in that way. Because how we define success and how someone who is in our lives defines it is very different. But I think it's a really helpful North Star, if you will, to have a definition of success along with those values in the exercise. So this is a gentle invitation. Maybe alignment this week isn't making 6 figures. Maybe it's taking lunch away from your laptop, leaving work on time, saying no to an opportunity that might feel good but might not logistically work, or vice versa. Taking one day completely off, deleting one obligation on your plate of the day, simplifying one process, delegating one task. Delegation can be hard for business owners, especially when perfection comes through, but it's a really good one to practice. Give that obligation to someone whose zone of genius it is, right? Simplify one process. Sometimes the most transformative business decision isn't adding something, it's actually removing something to make space for you and how you align. A big part of aligned entrepreneurship is also seeking support and advocating for yourself. Specifically, when you don't own your own business and you're in a career path or you're even in a role that's like parenting, right? We all need support. And part of that is naming other people's zones of genius and allowing them to support you. It can be really hard, but support doesn't mean weakness. It means allowing yourself to do what you're best at. And I just want to name that because a lot of the deep work that I do with entrepreneurs and people who are really in their career zones or in their roles, in the thick of their roles, honestly, forget that asking for help is also modeling for others. That's how we get our needs met. We think we have to be perfect or that we have to role model that you can't ask for help, but really it actually creates a community and cultivates the ability to be authentic and seek supports around you, which is really actually powerful, especially if you're running a team or running a household. Like, how powerful is that to teach others that asking for support is something that's not only rewarded, but accepted? I also want to name part of what we talked about in our alignment series is how alignment isn't easy, and neither is business ownership or being in a career role or being in a role that you hold. And so oftentimes when we're making aligned decisions, that doesn't always mean comfortable ones. For example, right? I'm in a space right now where I need to decide to hire or not, and if I want to do that or not. But when I was approached with, hey, the best decision for you would be to hire right now, financially, that makes sense. That's a good next move, right? It wasn't a conversation of like, what do you want to do and what feels good to you? It was more like this would be like the appropriate next steps. Great, appropriate next steps. What do I want? Does that align with me right now? Does hiring feel good to put on my plate? Do I want to put the energy there? Do I have time and capacity to put the energy there? Does that growth feel aligned with not just my business strategy, but with my nervous system? And so it's also taking the minute to align with the opportunities that come and evaluate if it's something you actually want or not. Because it's okay to not want that or not to be in a space to accept what's coming. But we need to remind ourselves that we don't have to accept every opportunity or decline every opportunity, but we need to ask ourselves what serves us. So, as we close today, I want to leave you with this thought: businesses evolve because people evolve. You're allowed to outgrow the systems that once supported you. You're allowed to redefine success. You're allowed to pivot. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to become someone new. Aligned entrepreneurship isn't about creating the perfect business. It's about creating a business that continues to reflect the person you're becoming, not the version of yourself who believed worth had to be earned through exhaustion. When I started my business, I was in my 20s, single, and life was so different. I could work till 9 o'clock at night. But now I'm a mom, I'm a partner. I own three businesses. And so the way I manage my time and the way I run my businesses are completely different, and that's okay. Making room for Hat Rack with Hannah, right? That is a part of my week now, and that's something I love and enjoy. And that's okay, but it's me not being exhausted to do it, but instead creating it in a way that reflects the person I'm becoming and the spaces I'm trying to grow into. The world doesn't need another entrepreneur running on empty. We often boast about, oh, I was in the office till this time, or I had to work this weekend, or whatever. That just tells me you're depleting yourself. Oftentimes, when I'm communicating to my humans that I'm drowning, I'll tell them, oh shit, I was in the office till 8:30 last night. And they're like, oh no. But it's not something to boast about. That just tells me you're depleting yourself. We need more entrepreneurs and people in their careers and their roles that are rooted in integrity and connected to themselves and courageous enough to build from a place of wholeness instead of proving something inauthentic. So this week, instead of asking, how can I do more? Try asking, what would it look like to build from a place of trust? I hope that this brings a new lens to the conversation of entrepreneurship and specifically aligned entrepreneurship and being in your career roles. The interview that we have this week is amazing and reflects someone who's just so authentic and genuine and manages all the hats. And then because she manages all the hats, she also has shifted her business to align to serve her. And so I think it will be a really great guest to drive home this aligned entrepreneurship piece. If this episode resonated for you, I'd love for you to share it with another entrepreneur or career girly or someone who's deep in a role and who might need the reminder that success doesn't have to come at the expense of themselves. Until next time. Remember, you don't have to wear every hat at once. Sometimes the most aligned thing you can do is choose that one hat that truly belongs on your head today. Please share, DM me your thoughts, write a review. I appreciate y'all, and I will see you next week.